Next on stage is one of, well, we're honoured really to have one of the UK's probably most famous explorers. And I can't really add any more, just let Robin come up and talk to you all.
A very long time ago, because I'm so much older than anybody else in the room, 3 undergraduates at Oxford at 3 o'clock in the morning were discussing their future and deciding what they were going to do with their lives. We all 3 decided we would become explorers. One of them was John Hemming, who came on to be director of this society and went on many expeditions and wrote the most important historical books about South America. I had lunch with him today. Great man. The other 2 were Richard Mason, who was a medical student, became a doctor, and me. And we looked at maps of the world and we decided what was going to be the last great journey on Earth. It has occurred to 1 or 2 other people since, but we decided that there was one continent left that had never been crossed, and that was South America, and we thought we would do it. And it had never been crossed other than, where's that little green thing? It should come on, it doesn't. Than down here between Buenos Aires and Santiago, the south. We decided to do it at the widest point from Recife to Lima, and were told that it was impossible. But we thought that if we followed the very fringes of where society was going in, settlers were beginning to penetrate the Amazon, and we were right at the edge of where people were coming and also meeting people on rivers, we might be able to do it. And amazingly, we did. 6,000 miles, of which over half had never had a vehicle on it. We went across, and we succeeded in doing it. We were very young. We were very ambitious. We managed to persuade the Brazilian government, the Brazilian makers of the first Willys Jeeps in Brazil, to give us one, provided we returned it at the end, which we did. We had aero tanks on the roof. Whoops, that turns it off. That's great. Now what do I do? Thanks. I was trying to find the button that gives the arrow, and I can't find it. Anyway, there we are, about to set off, all fresh-faced and bushy-tailed and ready to go. We started at Recife. We went 1,000 miles due west, camping in the jungle, just tying hammocks to the edge of the jeep, and living off the land, or fish and what we hunted, and off the occasional settler that we met. But it was very... we didn't eat them, we were fed by them. So, would have done if we were hungry enough. Anyway, they were very hospitable, looked after us. When we came to rivers, we either drove through them like this, or when they were bigger, we built rafts and took everything out and took the jeep across that way and cut our way through the forest. Anyway, we got through. We met a lot of Indian tribes on the way, settled people, and less well-known, and these were some uncontacted Chavanti who'd had one contact before when they'd massacred all the Paulista settlers in one little family, and this was the first time a year later that they'd been seen. And we contacted them. We found them very friendly, very charming. They taught us how to use a bow and arrow, where to keep your spare arrow, and these guys are very famous in Brazil, the Chavanti, because they're now all settled, but they are great footballers because they play football barefoot. Perhaps they should have been playing in the World Cup. This is Richard Mason, who, with his friend, Chavanti, companion, and we found them absolutely delightful and carried on beyond there, and got right across Brazil to the Bolivian border, where we entered the Pantanal of Izazog, the Barreiros of Izazog, one of the largest swamps in the world, when it had just started to rain. It's about the size of France, and we had to learn how to get the jeep through by tying pieces of wood to the wheel and doing exciting things like that. But we got through. We made it to the other side. The Royal Geographical Society gave us the Ness Award. We became proper explorers, and of course, one of the things I feel guilty about is that now, of course, Amazonas is crisscrossed with roads, and we were the first, and that's what's destroyed Amazonas, but that's all another story. We came back, and we did it all. We navigated on this old Bartholomew's map, and we laid it out on the ground, and because I can't find the little spot, there is, if you look just beyond our route, if we'd gone straight, there's a sort of circle drawn on the map. And Richard Mason drew that and said, of course, that's where we should have gone. We shouldn't have had to bend south. That's the most exciting area. He and John Hemming went back on a major expedition 2 years later. Richard was ambushed by uncontacted Indians. There were supposed to be none in the area, and murdered. It was the last time clubbed to death. It was the last time an Englishman was killed by Indians, and it caused a huge international sensation. But I didn't go on that expedition because I just got married and was farming in Cornwall. But a couple of years later, I was invited to try and make the other traverse of South America, which was to go from the very north by the mouth of the Orinoco. Why doesn't the little green button come on? From the mouth of the Orinoco all the way down to Buenos Aires. And that's another 6,000 miles, again, a journey that had not been done before. I set off with Sebastian Snow, who was a legendary British explorer, the first man to go the length of the Amazon. And there we are in our little boat. Oh, it's this thing. Thanks. Good. I can now point if I can find what to press at. There's Sebastian. Woohoo! I've got that. And that's our boat. And it was designed a little Avon Red Cat because it was one that we could carry both the outboard motors and it over rapids and things on the way. And just to go back and show you on the map, now I've got my thing, there's only one watershed between the mouth of the Orinoco and the River Plate, which is here, and between the Amazon and the Paraná basins, because there's a river that runs over the watershed between the Orinoco and the Amazon. Extraordinary geographical phenomenon, which I've been through several times. And this picture is of Sebastian lowering our boat down a rapid on the Casiquiare Canal, which is about 250 kilometers long, on this amazing place. Anyway, at about that point, Sebastian became ill and had to go home, leaving me to do 3/4 of the journey on my own, which was extremely scary because a lot of it I was sometimes weeks on end away from anybody else, just camping on the bank, and sometimes 300 or 400 miles from the nearest other settlement, going up a series of little rivers that had not been visited for a very long time, if at all. And it was wonderfully frightening camping in these sort of places, finding somewhere to camp, exquisitely terrifying. I have a picture of myself with a camp, which looks rather cushy because it was on the Rio Negro, which is a sandy river. But the great thing to have on an expedition like this is a jungle hammock, because once you're zipped inside that, nothing can theoretically get at you. Certainly the insects can't. I did look out one morning and find large jaguar footprints underneath, which was scary, but I have a great belief that nothing will attack you if you don't attack it. And so I got through the whole of the river. The most dangerous thing was being illegal, because it was impossible to get permits to do all this, and I would have been arrested if I'd ever gone to the authorities. I'm escaping from Brazil past the fort that marks the border with Paraguay, where they were looking out for smugglers. But that was almost the most dangerous thing. There were a lot of hazards in the rivers, and it was a very exciting time. Anyway, I made it down to the bottom, got to the Iguazu Falls, which fortunately I didn't have to take the boat over, a slight side trip in Paraguay, but arrived shortly after that in Buenos Aires to a hero's welcome, as the first person who had made it possible to go by river from the mouth of the Orinoco to Buenos Aires. So the Argentinians thought that was rather wonderful. And when I got back, shortly after I got back to England, I was invited to lunch at Buckingham Palace, as you will find one is if you do exciting things like this in due course. There were 3 other guests, Henry Cooper, the boxer, Nigel Havers, the actor, and somebody whose name I didn't catch. And I found myself sitting next to Prince Philip, which is always a scary experience. And halfway through lunch, he turned to me and he said, "So you've just made this journey through South America. What was the economic significance of it?" And I thought, oh, shit, I hadn't thought of that. And desperately trying to think of something intelligent to say, and having probably read something in the paper that morning. And I promise you, I did not know who the 4th other guest was. I said, well, sir, it wouldn't be very easy to do in a boat, because most of the river was very shallow and there were a lot of rapids, and it would be very difficult to do anything. But I've just read about this amazing invention, a hovercraft, which that would do it. That would go over the sandbanks and over the rapids and everything, and you could take scientists and have an expedition and do all sorts of things. And he turned to the man the other side and said, "Mr. Cockerell, some of you may know that Sir Christopher, as he later was, Cockerell, invented the hovercraft." And he said, Mr. Cockerell, there's a chap here who you should give him one of your machines. He looked horrified. He said, well, if he's got £1 million, he can have one. And Prince Philip said, no, you should give him one. And amazingly, an expedition was formed soon after, which I was on, which retraced my steps over. And this is on the upper Orinoco, where this wonderful confrontation between the Yanomami Indians, the largest unacculturated people in South America, and the hovercraft took place. And it was on that expedition that, with another scientist, we conceived the idea of Survival International, which is my proudest achievement because that has become the major international organization representing people like this. So that's a wonderful cross-cultural picture. And then we carried on down the Orinoco through terrible rapids with a hovercraft and through Trinidad and made it across. So I'm the only person to have crossed South America at its widest point. I think nobody's ever done it since in that sort of way. But what I'm proud of is not the physical achievements, although the things you're hearing about tonight and the things that one hears about that people do, these wonderful achievements, physical achievements are very inspiring and very important and great. But if they lead to things like Survival International and to the other thing I'm proud of, which is my rainforest expedition, which led to the whole rainforest movement, if exploration can lead to earth-changing things like that, as well as inspiring people not to be overcome by their injuries or by any kinds of difficulties in life, then I think you're talking about real exploration. And I happen to have 2 extremely good books on this subject, of the 20 books that I've got 20 books in print, but I'm sparing you all but the last 2 of them, which are the Great Explorers and the Modern Explorers, which are out there in the drinks place to buy, and they are the essential equipment for any future explorer. Thank you.